Good evening, everybody. Excuse me. Excuse me. Good evening, everybody. Spirit of 420 here because everything I do is so 420. Happy Thursday evening to you. 9:20 in the PM Mountain Standard Time. So yummy. That's the life juice right there. So, um, I'll tell you this right now, and I don't know if he is watching, but this episode is dedicated to my father, my one and only. And I'm just going to tell him right now, real quick. There we go. And why did I do that? I mean, that's the real question that you have to ask yourself, right? So, as we get older, and I'm talking about everybody here, male, female, sexuality, it doesn't matter, right? This is for anybody. As we get older, number one, we change. Number two, we start to understand, what our parents have been telling us their whole lives. And what's funny is, from the moment that we're born, our parents are telling us things, right? Teaching us. And when your parents are in their 70s and you're in your 50s, the teaching is a little bit different. You now have a very good understanding that most likely what they say is going to come to volition. Number one. And number two, you are now at that point, like at this age that I am, I'm raising kids. So I now have been saying the same things, right? And it's funny, because right now I'm playing both roles. I'm having arguments, right, with my mother and father in concerns to being their son and from my viewpoint, right? But I am playing their same roles when I have arguments with my son at his age in his 20s, right? Like it's literally what's the word? It's like it's really weird at this age because I am literally having the same fight with both groups, but on the opposite sides of the argument, which gives you a really interesting perspective when you're, at this point. And this is the only time that I can see in my life when this is actually going to be the case, And the funny thing is, like I was talking to my parents about it, right? And I was like, I don't know what it was like when y'all were there, but I'm sure it would have been a lot easier had your parents kind of thought about it from this standpoint. And what I mean by that in the simplest of terms, I'm trying to come and tell them, hey, check this out. I'm at a place where I'm having these, exact same arguments. Did you ever come to your parents and say that? And number one. Number two, did they ever really take a look at how that was happening? And why do I even care? Because I'm going to be there like 20 years from now, 25 years from now. I'm going to be in the same place that my parents are, right? And there's a clear part of getting older that seems like, part of that is that you're going to get cranky and you're going to get, it wasn't like that back in my day. I'm already, in many ways, that's already happening to me now, right? Like, and I've talked about this before, but that's just happening faster and faster for each generation because of how much we evolve in such a short period. Like, our evolution now is, our rate of evolution now is, well, of course, the one thing that you can count on is that the rate of evolution is always faster than the 10 years or, make it 25 years previous, right? But now the rate of evolution is so fast that what transpires in only 10 years is life changing at this point, folks. Like, we're not talking about just little things. Think about the way you lived life 10 years ago. Think about the way you lived life 20 years ago, and tell me that we are not consistently now evolving where our lives change. I'm not talking about the rudimentaries. Obviously, you're going to wake up, you're going to go to school, you're going to go to work, or you're going to raise your kids. You're going to do something. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the way we live, the way that we do those, go through those motions of work and whatever the case may be. It's drastically changed. And it is obvious that it continues to evolve at a faster rate. If you think about, what's up, brother? I'm not on your lawn, man. What are you talking about? Get off my lawn. We are now at a place where, like, let's just take, pure examples. Think about looking for a job. I don't know if any of y'all are doing that right now, but think about looking for a job 10 years ago. Hell, even 5 years ago. But seriously, go 10 years back. First of all, you have websites and job boards that weren't even around, or they weren't even being utilized yet, or they were just starting. Like, for instance, in 2017, Indeed was really working hard to become the one that it is. ZipRecruiter had just come out. It wasn't, I don't know that either one of them were around in 2014. I'm almost positive ZipRecruiter wasn't. Indeed might have been around before 2015. The reason I bring this up is because the job boards keep changing. The evolution of getting a job changes to the point where, the old boards either have to figure out a new way to do it, or they're going to be left behind. For instance, Monster's barely hanging on. Career Builder is barely hanging on. I don't know that anybody knows about Dice anymore, which used to be like a purely great place for techs, right? And maybe the case is, maybe, I'm not saying that they're not being used. That's not my point, folks. I'm talking about the vast majority of them. People move to the new and improved, faster, better algorithm. Like, that's what we do now, right? Think about raising money before Kickstarter. Kickstarter is now a way of life, but that hasn't even been around for 20 years, maybe 20 years. Let's see exactly when did Kickstarter get, it's easier to do this. It's much easier just to use the phone anymore. When was Kickstarter founded? Okay, so technically they were founded in 2009. However, people didn't really start utilizing them and understanding them until at least 2014, right? So they weren't around 20 years ago. I was right on that. They've only been around, 15 years, right? 2019, okay. So they've been around for 15 years. And in those 15 years, not just them, but many other companies have revolutionized. When you have a sickness, what do you think immediately? If you're sick, or somebody has been killed, or you're trying to raise money for any kind of crucial type situation, come on, man. I bet you're already thinking it. If you're not, then you should know GoFundMe, right? That is the one that people go to when they have been mentally, physically, or emotionally harmed and need help. That's like the number one. Kickstarter is great for like board games and inventions of that kind. Indiegogo is more for like entertainers in film, right? I'm bringing this up because what happens is one company changes it, and then you have several other companies that end up coming in and doing what happens now consistently, and they break it up. Let me give you another example of before most of y'all were probably thinking like we are now, right? Walmart originally came out long time ago. I'm not even gonna look at when that was founded. We're talking about well before. I'm almost positive Walmart was founded well before I was even born in '72. Okay, Walmart came out, and they came out really in direct competition, if you will, with Kmart, which had already been around for a while, right? Except Kmart was the blue light special, the home of the blue light special. And what that meant back in the day when Kmart first came around is like it was garbage. It wasn't good stuff, but you could get it cheap, right? Walmart changed that by being a mass buyer so that you could sell, and they did it in two ways, but mass buying that could sell things cheaper than anybody else. And then Sam was willing to take a loss on specific products. He would strategically pick products that he would sell for less than he bought, because he knew that if people came into Walmart, they were not going to buy just the one light bulb for $1 less than anywhere else in the world. They were going to get all kinds of other stuff that they needed, right? And how correct was the guy? Well, when somebody does something like that, people with brains take notice. And one of the first guys to really, take notice, and he took that idea and disrupted the home improvement industry, and that was Arthur Blank. That guy started Home Depot, and you can say what you want, but Home Depot changed it forever. You have Ace Hardware barely holding on, but they had to massively change the way that they were doing business. Plus, they had to totally start selling at a much lower price point in order to keep up with Home Depot. And what's funny is Lowe's almost went out of business, but what did they do? They literally mocked the business so that you had a choice. They made a great decision. You can either go to Lowe's or Home Depot. They're both the same fucking store. Anybody who's been in them or been shopping knows what I mean. It's the same experience. One's orange, one's blue, right? They have, most of the time, they have the same stuff, but some carry specific tool brands and some carry the other tool brand. Like, if you can't get it at Lowe's, the guarantee is you can get it at Home Depot. Now, I'm only pointing it out because it continues. I don't know who did it, but the next series of companies to fall under that was the office supply industry. So then all of a sudden you had Office Depot, what was the other one? There's Office Depot, Office Max, right? And Staples. Essentially, they were all the same thing. Now, how did these companies, and I know this was dedicated to my father. How did I go off on this tangent? My apologies. Yes. They were, particularly Sam was brilliant. I'm trying to remember how I got to this. Oh, the whole point that I was trying to make is that when we get to this age, yeah, no, I'm leaving that subject because that really, I was trying to talk about my father, and sometimes, I do go off on a tangent. I was trying to talk about the relationship, I should say, with my father and how that is transpiring. It's frustrating, more so with my father than my mother, mainly because we're men and we're the same. So alike. With my father, though, it becomes something where he ends up feeling like there's nothing that he can do that I approve of, right? Or in a nutshell, I disapprove of everything he's doing, which is absolutely not the truth, okay? It's frustrating because when you get to be my age and you see your parents doing things, you're going to be there, right? You realize you've come to full understanding that that's where you're headed, right? What's up, brother? Love you, man. You have full understanding that that's where you're heading. So, most of us start looking at things a little differently. Like, okay, well, I'm going to get there too. And how do I want to handle that when I get to be that age, right? I'm trying to listen to my children more and be open to that. That's one thing. Um, I'm trying to learn to truly look at myself because it's extremely hard. And the older we get, the less we want to look at ourselves because we're set in our ways. Right? This is who we are. Fuck it if you can't deal with it. And to a large degree, I completely understand with or completely agree with that. To a large, um, I highly agree with that. Excuse me, because you do get to a point where you're like, there's, I think there's a certain amount of us, each of us, that should be like, like and love me for who I am, or go on. Right? I don't have time to waste on anybody not digging me anymore. However, when you're dealing with your parents and you're in your 50s and you see, your father doing something that you want to say something about, but you're already at that point, right? Like, so we're at this point where no matter what I say, it now feels like to him, for him, the feeling is that nothing he says is right. For the feeling for me, it feels like, how am I now at the point where I can't tell him anything without him, and I've tried in jest. I've tried, lowering my voice and not being angry. What happens is at that age, I'm assuming I'm not that age, but I know from, because I feel this on the exact same side. That's the other thing. My son right now, nothing I do when he comes over, I try to talk to him. Nothing I do is right. That's how it feels. Right. Although he tells me he loves me and all this, it feels like I can't do anything right. That's obviously not the truth, or else he would say that. Right. And what's funny is for him, he has absolutely said something similar. He's like, no matter what I do, Dad, it seems like I'm not doing it the way that you would. So you have this going on here and then here, right? And I'm playing in the middle. That should be a huge indicator that this is what's the word? Um, a blown up, that's not it, exaggerated feeling, right? Exaggerated feeling. Nobody in this little trio of folks that we're talking about, grandfather, father, son, nobody in that scenario is, how I say it, everybody in that scenario feels like nothing they can do is loved by the other one, step down or step up, right? When in reality, for all three, that is not the truth. And in fact, the vast majority of what all of us do, my son and my father included, the vast majority, I would say, I would even venture to say at least 90% of what we do and concerns to our relationship with one another is good and on the up and up, right? But here's what happens. So let's just take that as a percentage and a number. That means 9-1, right? When you're the person dealing with them, all these other 9, it's just the nature of family, get taken for granted for, and you don't see it, like I've talked about in the past, right? You only see what you're seeing and paying attention to, and that becomes it, and that blows it up, right? It blows up that one particular thing. So then you do one thing wrong, and if somebody mentions it, then it feels like all you ever do is wrong. Why? Because the person that's mentioning it also isn't going into detail about how much they appreciate you or how much you did for them. Like, for instance, he tuned in last night to the show. And before I could tell him thank you, which I was so like, it actually, he doesn't watch this very often, he's his own man doing his own thing. And I get that, that's the way most parents are. There was two things. Not only did he watch the show, but he was truly concerned with Joe and how Joe was doing. And I thought that that was incredibly nice and genuine. Right? Totally agree. And you're not, here's the thing. You can be, and I believe this, Joe, and I think you'll get it. I believe you can be both, right? A servant of God, but a leader to the flocks down here, because somebody has to show people that it's, you know, what it truly means to live here. It's not about money and it's not about power. Although you will get tempted consistently with that thought that that is where somehow salvation lies in having money and power. It's not. The people with money and power are just as lost as ever. And if you don't believe me, look at what some of these fucking crazy billionaires are spending their money on, and you will come to terms. It is, I'm not even gonna tell you, just go look, go find out what some of them spend their money on, and you'll be like, oh my God. And some of us, we don't worship, but we look up to these people. What do you mean who? What do you mean who? I don't understand. You got that. I'm lost with what you just said. Oh, my father. So back to what I was saying. I was speaking to him this morning, and the first thing that came out of me is like, "How's Joe?" And I knew two things right away. A, he watched the show, and B, he actually cared about what was happening with a friend, right? And that, I thought that was, all I can say is that really made me feel good. However, before I could tell him all that, because the conversation went naturally where it was going, he said something, and I tried to, I don't want to say correct him, but I tried to point out what he said and how that was taken, and I also have my son listening, and I don't want to get into specifics, but the bottom line is, and this is how I told him, I sit here and preach certain things, and I believe in action over words. And one of the things that I truly believe in is practice what you preach. If you're going to say it, then you, by God, you better try at least to do it. So when I said what I said to him today, it was truly to practice what I preach. And I tried to say it first in a nice way, but it didn't get taken that way. And by the time it was over, not only had I not said anything nice about what he did, but now I had a tone with him, right? The point that I'm trying to make is he ended up feeling like nothing he did was right. However, he had done so much right, and there was so much more that he did right. It's that the good stuff not only gets looked over, but even in ourselves, we look over the positives, right? Because why? The positives are not usually teaching us anymore. What do I mean by that? If something bad happens, then you have to learn. If you do something wrong, you say something wrong, or whatever, you've got to learn to do it differently. If you're doing something correctly and going about it, unless it's something you just learned how to do, or it's something that you used to do shitty and you're now doing it well, then you're probably not going to get a whole lot of recognition for it. Why? Because it's just part of your day, and you're probably not going to learn anything from it. Why? Because you do it all the time, right? Dogs are barking as normal. So, to me, the key when you're dealing with your parents or you're dealing with your children, since I'm in both positions right now, is truly to make sure that anybody I'm talking to, and I think I might start to preface this, and it was something that I think the first time I learned it was in therapy back in the 80s, and that is, if you have a problem with somebody, point out the good things first. However, if you start to do that all the time, it becomes a tactic. And I remember trying this back in the day, and you would say a couple of nice things, and then someone would look, okay, what did I do wrong? Right? It's not a new tactic. It is completely well known. So when I say this, I would say try to do it with a transparent approach. Say, listen, I want to talk to you about some shit. However, before I mention some of the things that I'd like you to think about or look at, or they might even be considered shortcomings or whatever, I want to point out all these great things about you, and literally take the time, take the moment, and say, hey, yep, tell him I love him, man. But I am so trying to practice my life on complete transparency. So rather than, to me, a tactic is something that the other party is unaware you're doing to provoke an outcome. Right? Would y'all agree? So rather than making this a tactic, make it a practice that you let the other person, whomever they are, this isn't just for parents and children, let them know, hey, I have an issue with you. I have a problem with you. I have whatever you want to call it, say, but before I say that, and before we even talk about it, I really want you to know why I love the shit out of you, or why I love working with you, why I like you so much, why you're my best friend, or why you're my closest coworker, or why I never talk to you because you're stinky. The bottom line is, I know, I've already done this. I believe people will, I know if you do it correctly, and what I mean by that is do it earnestly. Don't half-ass this stuff. Like, really mean it, A, the person on the other side will feel it, and B, they will absolutely be receptive to it. They will understand that you are not trying to point out only the negatives in them. And if they don't, then literally tell them that. Again, complete transparency. If they say, why are you telling me all this? Say, hey, because I want you to know you're not just this. You're all of this. And yes, just like any human on the planet, you make a mistake. And so, or you fuck up, or, you say something wrong, whatever. So I want you to know that I realize that this is a minuscule part of the incredible person that you are. I don't think that's asking too much. I don't think that is what's the word I'm looking for? I know that would benefit both parties, because first of all, they're going to listen to you more. They're going to listen more wholeheartedly, right? It's a fact. You say all these good things and then say, however, this is what I'd like you to work on, or this is where the issue lies, and you say that, they will listen so much more to that, number one. Number two, and I think almost as important, but trying to look at it from the non-selfish side, but helping them, if they're listening to it, then your relationship is going to get better, because they're going to in turn implement whatever the change is so that y'all get along better, which all in all just makes life happier. The third one and final. I mean, that's what it's all about, finding ways to interact without hurting one another, because we're not perfect, and we're not going to always do what the other person is okay with, right? And I don't even believe it's anymore about, and I didn't get this for years. I remember for years my mother would be like, it's not about right and wrong. I didn't get it. I'm like, there has to be a fucking right or wrong. Is it right to kill somebody? No, it's wrong. That's not what is meant by there's not a right and wrong. And I didn't get that at the time. In the sense, there's no right and wrong in this sense. Everything happens the way that it's supposed to. So when somebody is killed or dies or gives birth, it's not that it is a wrong or right thing. It is what it is, and it is going to affect this world in the way that it is supposed to. There are morals that are completely, the things that we live by, but they're really not it's not right and wrong in that sense. It's thou shalt not do, right? It's that doing this is against our morals. But if you do, then I know this sounds messed up, but that was your path. You know, there's so many people that have had to go to war and kill, and they always talk, almost every vet who's ever had to kill says the same thing. Like, especially that first time, right? Like, when you realize that it's them or you, number one, all your training kicks in, and number two, you do what has to be done. But they all still feel it later. Like, that the reality is they took a life. They took a life in wartime because they fought for their country, for whatever that may be, or their city or their state, whatever the hell it is, right? But they all deal with the reality of taking a human life and what they have done. And I know a lot of them personally spend a lot of time praying to God and asking for forgiveness after their wartime, asking for forgiveness. Hey, please forgive me for doing this. It was either me or them. And that's, when two men are put into a battle, and they're fighting for country, state, family, whatever, and they know that it's either kill or be killed, there is no choice there. See, that's not morally right or wrong. That's what you have to do. So the coffee likes to this little tiny hole right here, just pow, right on the nose, man. All right. I will be back on Saturday. Oh, tomorrow is the 12th. No, I think it's the 19th. Yeah, so check this out. Hold on. I'll tell you exactly. I know Charlie Tuna. I don't know if y'all know Charlie Tuna. If you don't know him, it's literally CHA2NA, Charlie Tuna. Really? How did you not find? Okay, stupid. Am I spelling it wrong? I could have sworn it was Charlie Tuna. Oh, that it's Charlie, CHALI space 2NA, Charlie Tuna, and Cut Chemist. That's next Friday. So I might as well tell you now. I don't know how I'm going to do. Maybe I'll just stream from there. Maybe I'll do a live stream from the show, because that would be awesome. Because I'm supposed to stream on the 19th. And did I say he was? It's going to be him and Cut Chemist live at the Levette Pavilion in Denver. I cannot wait for that. Now, the one that I was upset about and I missed, and I truly am upset about it. The Pavilion does every year. They do this fucking badass series of free concerts, and I missed Flowbots. I also missed Fishbone 2 years in a row now. But life is, unfortunately, concerts are not the most important thing. Not only that, but I had like a ridiculous. This is before I started streaming. This was during the pandemic, but right after we started coming out of lockdown, right? And we actually started it even before, because we saw quite a few streaming shows. But we ended up going to like a whole series of concerts. I think it was like 12 shows all in all, when you include the ones we went to, so we went to shows in Denver, here in the Springs, online. It was It was awesome. We now refer to it as the pandemic concert series for us. So it was pretty cool. And you know what? I'm here. I'm going to take one more dab. Why not? Why not take one more and say, I love you to all you beautiful people. And I really hope that you have a great Friday. Thank God it's Friday tomorrow, right? Have a wonderful Friday. Enjoy it. Make it last. Have a wonderful beginning to your weekend. I will see you on Saturday evening. I got a bunch of work to do. You know, one of the things that I told you I had a good day, and what they asked for, you know, put it this way, what they asked for was 7.5 hours of talk time. My goal is to deliver 9 hours of talk time and hopefully even find my first deal within those hours. And I'm telling you right now, I'm really busting my ass. I didn't get up. I did not get up early, but I was on the phone from basically 12:15 to 9, with the exception of a couple of breaks. So, plus I'm going to be calling on Saturday. Plus I'm going to be calling on Sunday. That's just me. You know, my family comes first, and that is the reality. However, when I start a new job, my family also understands that in the beginning, in the ramp-up period, which is exactly why it's called a ramp-up period. Number one, it's not forever. Number two, the harder I work during that ramp-up period, right, the more people I will help, number one, and the more I'll help us, my family, because we will benefit from it monetarily, right? But for me, the focus is how many people can I help and how much help can I do? The goals that I set, it's all about that. Big old fat claimer. Love you guys. I will be here on Saturday. I hope, as I said, I hope and pray that everybody has a wonderful time. Hope you have an incredible Friday. An even more incredible beginning to your weekend on Saturday. And I will see you on Saturday night. Until then, just remember, and this is literally one of the easiest things to remember, you know, and it's so important. I'll give you another one next time, right? But this time, just keep this one in your memory banks all the time. Be true to you, and you'll pull through. It's the truth. All right. Love you guys. Have a good evening. See you Saturday. Peace.
I switch hit, I'm a strange fuck. Consistent ain't something I could say well. Throw my change into the wishing for a change well. Wish a day is swell life for the next come. And when the next come, pretend that it's the best one. Like I ain't even gonna try and say that to the next one.